Dr. Wallace Brucker here from LVLongevityLab in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. I'd like to spend a couple minutes talking to you about our approach to the practice of medicine, particularly functional medicine, and the benefits it might provide you as the patient, one, as a patient, but two, to educate you a little bit about the method to our madness and why that might be important to you in helping you enact or choose the changes you need to make in your personal lives to expand your health span as well as potentially your lifespan. So one of the problems we ran into with our initial attempts to introduce this type of medicine to society was many people were used to digestible informational little tidbits, little bites here and there. For example, doctor, I would like an NAD infusion, or doctor, I would like to use your infrared light bed or your infrared sauna or your plunge pool. Well, really good to do. I think providing some context on why it's working or potentially working and helping you might be also important to know. In addition to that, I'd like to offer you a way of thinking about medicine is things don't break down in isolation or start to run down or wear down in isolation. Your body has a tremendous capacity to overcome short-term adversity, whether it's exposure to cold or heat, and provide a longer-term benefit as a part of that. But the effects of the beneficial effects of, say, a single infrared session, while they may last several hours, they really become beneficial when you do it over time. So this is really more of a lifestyle changing approach. To that end, I'd like to just take a moment and not focus so much on the individual things, although we'll get to that in a little bit, but put it all together, if you will, a 50,000-foot view. So very poorly drawn up here is a picture of a mitochondria. It's the energy-producing cellular organelle, very small. They can be optimized. Your body also has the capacity to make more of them. They can be repaired, and without optimum efficiency. This is probably one of the mechanistic ways of aging, why we age, because the cell without its energy starts to fall apart or starts diminishing its ability to function properly and becomes more of a zombie cell, which is consuming your energy but providing you with nothing. So very simplistically, the way we generate the energy is we have buried within, I'll just draw as little hash marks, within this undulating surface of the inside of the mitochondria is something called your electron transport chain. And I'm not going to write it out, but it's just easier to remember as ETC. It's buried within this bilipid membrane, and it's a series of complexes. I'm not going to provide any kind of details to the drawings. Just know that these complexes are proteins where chemical reactions take place. And they're relatively geographically spaced closely together because they're exchanging products back and forth with the end point eventually to produce ATP. We put oxygen in the system with a form of energy. In this case, we'll call it glucose. And through a series of chemical reactions, we eventually end up, ideally, with ATP, carbon dioxide, which we breathe out, and water, and heat. That's if this were 100% efficient, but it's not. Much like an internal combustion engine, ideally you put gasoline in, you burn it. After you spark it, you burn it, you produce heat, you produce the energy to move the car, and out of the tailpipe you'd want CO2 and water. The problem is anybody who lives near a highway knows you get a ton of smoke, particulates that come out of the exhaust pipe, plus other things like carbon monoxide. So that is a measure of the inefficiency of the system. You're not burning the gasoline completely and producing 100% energy. So the cell's the same. Some of the other things that we produce as this chemical reaction goes along is something called a reactive oxygen species. These are bad things. These are the things that antioxidants fight. So your things like your glutathione, many of your, particularly your darker fruits will have the antioxidants in them. Because an accumulation of these reactive oxygen species, they damage eventually the cell membranes that hold that cell together and functioning correctly. So they're a byproduct of a natural reaction, but they can get out of control. So we're really looking at two effects when you want to optimize at its most basic level is your ATP production. Generally is one to improve your ATP efficiency of producing ATP, and number two, you want to diminish your reactive oxygen species. And we're going to go into a couple of those here. So one of the things that you notice immediately is there are a series of molecules in here. I'm just going to draw a couple of them in here. Just realize that this can go back and forth as electrons are shunted down or through these different proteins and through different chemical reactions. We start to see where we can start to affect change. So for example, if you want to make more of this, it stands to reason that you put more of this in there. So one of the ways that we can do that is with hyperbaric oxygen. And you are familiar with, probably many of you are familiar with these hyperbaric chambers. Usually the ones you're exposed to are soft-sided chambers that can get up to a pressure of about 1.3 to 1.4 atmospheres, as opposed to a hard-shelled chamber, which can go from 2 atmospheres and up. I'll just pause very brief and tell you what an atmosphere is, but we'll get to it when we get to the chamber. The way that this works is when you get in this hard chamber, you pump air into it to raise the pressure enough to force more oxygen directly into your bloodstream. So in addition to putting oxygen inside your red blood cells, you're forcing more oxygen under pressure directly into the blood liquid. And that oxygen floats around your body. Since it's a molecule we use, the oxygen as it passes by a cell will grab it and use it here at this level. The other product that's part of air predominantly is nitrogen. Nitrogen is something we do not use. So if you go into a pressurized chamber, the extra nitrogen is placed as a gas directly into your bloodstream, and it will stay as a dissolved gas until you take the pressure off, and then it comes out of solution and you breathe it back out. So you come out of a dive slowly so you can breathe that excess nitrogen out of your bloodstream through your lungs. When you don't do it, the bubbles come out of solution and they accumulate in your joints, and that's called the bends. That's an aside. We'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, the hyperbaric oxygen places more oxygen directly into your bloodstream, which then your body uses, hopefully, to make more of this, your ATP. As we get older, we accumulate these, and so there's an expectation of damage at this level, the mitochondrial level, and by extension, the damage to the efficiency of your electron transport chain. So how are some other ways that we can improve what we are working with this electron transport chain, or the 4 complexes, as they're known, is to potentially bypass some proteins that may be damaged, and this is where methylene blue comes in. Methylene blue was an industrial dye, but if it's made correctly in a dilute and you dilute it and add it to your body as something that you drink or take as a pill, that methylene blue can eventually allow you to become more efficient because it's allowing you to bypass 2 complexes that may be potentially not working or working suboptimally. Then there is another cofactor that's required. You heard of CoQ10. CoQ10 is a cofactor that's used as we shunt these products back and forth, and you can become deficient of CoQ10. So for those of you who are wondering why CoQ10 is so important, it fits in this electron transport chain to allow the chemical reaction to work better. So what else can be done to optimize this? So we've talked about put more oxygen in, the methylene blue, CoQ10, and NAD. NAD can be given in any number of ways, but the most reliable and best studied way is an IV form of NAD, which actually raises the blood levels, and by assumption, since the blood levels are higher, you can then take the cells can take the NAD directly out of your blood and use it for their own purposes. Then kind of the final commonly accepted way of making this operate more efficiently is to add infrared or near infrared light. Because at certain wavelengths, there is a light-sensitive response within the electron transport chain, specifically to infrared and near-infrared light, that allows this reaction to work better. So, as you can see, you really need to optimize all components of this process for it to work better. Now, as a related aside, we also talked about the reactive oxygen species and how we get rid of them. Well, we've talked a little bit about diet, and there's a number, you can look it up yourselves, on things that have high oxidants. But another way to kind of rapidly infuse or give your body those very, very powerful oxidants, one of them is called glutathione. And essentially, this is the answer to this. Now, that is a given substance to help you, but your body also has the ability to generate antioxidants with basically subunits or components based on the stress that the body's seeing that the ROSs are causing. And those can be induced. That means you can create circumstances by either something you do or something you eat that turns on that switch to produce more antioxidants on your own. And you've actually heard about a couple of them, but these would be things like, I'm not going to say starvation, but that's the effect, but it's fasting is a big one. IV NAD also is another big one. And things like infrared or dry heat saunas. Those are just three real quick ones. That's where they fit in, is they fit into this part of it as well. So with that in mind, now that you can place in context the things we're going to talk about next, you'll know where at least to put them in your mind and see if they can be incorporated into your day. So I've taken a couple minutes here just to kind of outline what we do here at LVLongevityLab in Las Vegas. The results are compelling. They're factual. They're based on really well thought out research and design studies. They're currently just not used because this isn't how medicine is practiced in the United States. But if this resonates with you and you'd like to begin your wellness journey, potentially toward a longer lifespan, but a healthier lifespan, I'd invite you to reach out to us at LVLongevityLab.com. Give us a call. We'll set up an appointment and go through this in detail.